Bonjour. Merci pour votre accueil. It's really cool to see startup ecosystems popping up all over the globe, and I've spoken a little bit with some of the people who run the family, and they seem like excellent people doing really cool things in Paris. As mentioned, I'm going to talk for about half an hour and then sort of do some questions. I'd love to get a little bit of an understanding about who you are. So how many of you are entrepreneurs working in your own companies right now? Is it kind of all of you? Is that like, and how many of you are investors? Any investors? Any sort of early startup employees who aren't founders? Okay, so mostly entrepreneurs. So the pineapple was mentioned. So at Firebase, we actually have a thing called Bring Your Pineapple to Work Day. So back when it was just my co-founder and I, he brought a pineapple. He went to the supermarket and bought a pineapple and brought it into work. And I was like, why do you have a pineapple? And he said, it's Bring Your Pineapple to Work Day. And he quickly put it on our company calendar and set it as an annual recurring event. He was like, see, it's Bring Your Pineapple to Work Day. And so we completely forgot about it. And a year later, we had hired a couple of employees. And one day, 2 of them showed up to work with pineapples. And we were like, why do you have a pineapple? And they were like, I don't know, it was on the calendar. And so it spiraled out of control, and we've had it for 5 or 6 years in a row now. And everyone comes in, there were people dressed as pineapples, there's pineapple ice cream, there's sliced pineapples, there's pineapple watches and shirts, and it's really important to think about these little things that make your culture, these little things that pull your employees together and build sort of these unique traits around your company. So how I'm intending to do this is sort of tell you about my journey and kind of have a theme that runs throughout it. And that theme is really the resourcefulness and the resilience that you need to have as an entrepreneur. Starting a company, building something from nothing is extremely difficult. Winston Churchill once said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And I think that really resonates quite a bit with startup entrepreneurs. You're going to run into many roadblocks. You're going to run into many, many people who tell you no. Like this, this isn't going to work. No, I won't give you investment. No, I won't, join you because I don't believe in your idea. And you kind of have to irrationally believe, and you have to really get creative about how to do something with very little resources, how to do something with a very small team. So I started out, I was born in London, went to the US for university, a couple of years of school and university, and I actually met my co-founder in school. I think I was about 16 years old, and I met him. We went our separate ways for university, and I was constantly, throughout my time at university and briefly afterwards, looking for an environment that I wanted to be in, looking for an environment that I was really happy in. And I never found it. I kind of moved in my internships, in my summers, moved from companies of sort of decreasing size, big companies down to small companies, because I thought there I would find people who weren't just looking at the clock and waiting to go home at 5 p.m. And I never found that. I tried consulting. I thought, this consulting is going to be fantastic. Every 3 months, I'll move on to something new, something fresh. And I never found an environment that I was really happy in. So I sort of, in a strange way, thought, well, if I can't find anything, I don't want to spend 40 years doing something I don't like. So I'll create my own environment. And so that sort of started my entrepreneurial journey. I haven't explained what Firebase is, so if some of you are wondering, I will get to that later. So started off with my co-founder. We moved in together. He was living in Southern California at the time. He had graduated a little bit before me, and he was living and working in just near Los Angeles. And so I was a broke student. I had no money. I had just finished finished grad school. And so we moved in together, and we actually shared a room for the first year. So I slept on the floor actually on a beanbag because I couldn't afford a bed. I literally had no money. Slept on a beanbag in his room. And we had a whole bunch of things that like really got in our way. And I think this is one of the first lessons that I kind of want to talk about is you really need to build a very strong foundation with your co-founder. One of the first things you need to do is you need to have alignment. You need to understand what do you want long-term and what do they want. Do you want to get rich? Do you want to build something that lasts for 10 years, 20 years? Do you want to run a company? Do you want to be king or queen? Do you kind of want to be the CEO and have an organization that you can use to bring your vision into the world? Are you just, there's a lot of people out there who are doing startups, who are starting companies because they saw Mark Zuckerberg and want to be like him. And so really having frank, direct, honest conversations with your co-founders is extremely important and getting on that same page. So that's the alignment piece. And then second is the trust piece. Trust, I think you develop over time by looking at the actions of your co-founder. And so I think we built up a huge amount of trust by showing how much we were willing to sacrifice to do this. So for example, one of the things I did, so I had no money. I just finished university. And in order to get money, we moved into the same room together for a year. And I actually taught gymnastics to 16 and 17-year-old girls. The one catch here is that I didn't know anything about gymnastics. So basically, he was a competitive gymnast, and he worked at a gymnasium. And he said, there's a class that needs teaching. Why don't you teach it? I'll teach you what to say, and you'll make like a ton of money. You'll do it like one night a week, and you'll be able to pay for rent and food. And so he taught me what to say, and I very sort of authoritatively taught these 16 and 17-year-old high school girls how to do gymnastics. And that's kind of how I bootstrapped and paid for the startup initially. So our very first idea was a fingerprint sensor for the iPhone. And this is in 2008. So it was a fingerprint sensor for the iPhone where you could swipe your credit card, you could make a credit card payment, and it would come to your iPhone, and you could accept or reject it. Turns out it was a really good idea. It was just about 5 or 6 years too early. Hardware is extremely difficult, very, very challenging. And so I think the next lesson in sort of being resourceful and resilient is really you have to think about market timing, and you have to sort of really push on things. And we did push. We worked very, very hard for probably about 6 months. But ultimately, hardware is extremely difficult. It requires a lot of upfront capital, and we just couldn't build the experience that users wanted. Now Apple has built this fingerprint sensor like into their device, and it's a beautiful user experience. So that was our first startup. It was called Keep. The second one we moved on to was called Send Me Home. And Send Me Home was a social network back when social networks were all the rage. And so what we did is we built a social network that was, instead of having a profile of you and your friends can comment on your wall or send you messages, we built a social network for physical objects. So you could have a page about the Arc de Triomphe. You can have a page about your flat, your apartment. And people could collectively tell the story of these places. And it turns out that we got a good amount of users, but we made absolutely no money off of this. It was very difficult to get enough traffic to sell advertising dollars against it, or to, we sold these little labels that you could, affix and scan, and it would bring you to the page. It was very, very difficult to do that. So we ended up selling it for a very small amount of money. And I think sort of I had this very grandiose idea that I was going to try and change human nature, or I was going to, basically where I went wrong was I was trying to change human nature. So I wanted to connect people through things other than physical identity. So you have people who, the behavior that we often see is you get pitted against each other in football matches. It's France versus Germany, or it's Palestine and Israel. And I wanted to connect people so that they could share common experiences that weren't tied to their identity but were tied to physical things. Turned out people didn't want this at all. And so I think lesson number 2 in being careful about how to be resilient is don't go against human nature. Don't go against what the market is looking for, because it's an uphill battle and it's something that you ultimately will not win, and you'll have a very difficult time. You really want to find that product market fit. You want to catch the wave of the market, and so you have to time it. And I sort of mentioned this earlier with Keep Security. You have to time it right. We were too early there and didn't have the capital to outlast it or the ability to build it into the phone. And you can't just go against human nature. So then we went and got real jobs for a short period of time. So the two of us, we were sort of done with that. We'd really run out of money now. I'd stopped teaching gymnastics. And so we went and got real jobs, and we actually did some contracting work. And so on our first day of contracting work, this is just a funny aside, a first day of doing contracting work, my new boss picks us up in his car, like a very sleek Mercedes-Benz. And in the car, we're driving, it's about a 45-minute drive to the office. He tells us that we're going on-site at a client. And this is about mid-February 2009 now. And we're going on-site at a client, and he tells us, I'm very late in delivering this project. It was due January the 1st. So this is about 6 weeks after it's due. And he says, I've told them that I'm bringing in my crack team of developers to help fix the problem. And you guys are my crack team of developers. So we're in the car now. It's too late. We can't escape. And so we show up, and it's this fitness company. They sell dietary supplements. And their COO, I think, was a former world's strongest man. He was a Norwegian man named Ode. And his hand was 3 times as big as mine. So he came up and shook it, and it enveloped my hand. And they were not happy. They were very angry. And so I had the former world's strongest man, very angry at the 3 of us. And we just kind of slunked away in the corner of this office. But we worked there for about 5 months, and we made money, and we made enough money to continue. And so even though we'd run up against 2 roadblocks, we were still really determined. We wanted to start a startup, we wanted to have an impact, and we wanted to create a great environment that we both wanted to be in. And so even though we had to take a little detour, we made some money, we sort of put some more petrol in the tank, and we kept going. And so now we moved up to San Francisco. I have no idea why we weren't there before, but it's one of the lessons learned. You really need to surround yourself with other entrepreneurs. You need to surround yourself with people in the ecosystem. And that's why I'm really excited about what the family's doing here, and why how all of you are here today. It really helps with funding. It helps hiring. It helps figuring out who your lawyer should be, who your accountant should be, when you can lean on these networks. So we moved up to San Francisco. And the next company we built, it was called Envolve. And from this social network, what we really wanted to do was build a chat feature into it. I wanted to connect people across, national boundaries or geographic boundaries. And I really wanted to do that, or one of the ways I wanted to do that was with real-time communication. And so we went and looked for chat systems out there. Facebook chat had just come out. We were we want something like that. There was nothing out there. And we thought, well, if we want that, I'm sure other people do as well. So that's the next company we built. And it was Facebook-style chat for any website. At this point in time, we'd moved to San Francisco. We'd gotten separate rooms. So we were step in the right direction, using some of that consulting money. And we, so we worked for about 6 9 months building this. And we launched it, and it went okay. It didn't go spectacularly well, but it went okay. And so we'd been working now for about two-ish years. And we decided to get some perspective. We said, okay, like this didn't go as well. We've had two failures, essentially, and we've had one that's just going okay. Let's step back and get some perspective. And so I think this is one of the things that you as entrepreneurs need to do. Like, you can get so wrapped up in your baby, in your idea. You can be so heads down 6-7 days a week. You can spend you wake up in the middle of the night, you think about your product, you think about what you're doing and how you move it to the next stage. And it's really important to take a holiday, to take a break, to get some perspective. And so our way of getting some perspective was, I had previously been to Haiti in the Caribbean to do some work. We built a library for a school. It was with a group I'd previously had, and we did some electrical wiring, and I had the opportunity to go back. And so I said, yeah, like, let's do that. We won't have our laptops, we won't have internet. We'll be doing some good work. So we went and did that, and it was fantastic. I think we were able to unplug. We were able to really help some communities in Haiti. And on the night that our last night, we were due to fly back the next day, we went out and we sort of explored Port-au-Prince, which is the capital city. And we went up on the roof of our hotel to watch the sunset. It was our last sunset in the Caribbean. And about 5 minutes after we went up to the roof of the hotel, the big earthquake hit, the Haitian earthquake of 2010. And we were very fortunate to have gone to the roof because most of the hotel collapsed. So we spent the next 3 days kind of trying to help as best we could. But I think that, and it was, trying to help in any way we could, but it really helped, again, give that perspective and built that foundation between my co-founder and I, continued to build on top of that. So came back to San Francisco and took a little bit of time. Involve this chat startup. We got into Y Combinator with it. Again, accelerators I highly recommend. And during Y Combinator, we sort of realized that some of our biggest, more interesting users were doing very strange things with our chat system. So, for example, our gaming customers would spin up these private rooms, and they would send data between them that the users couldn't see, like hit points and game state. We sort of scratched our head and said, well, why are you doing this? And it turns out that they just wanted to build their game. They wanted to create great game mechanics, and they wanted to make it look good, and they wanted to, focus on building things like user or leaderboards and matching systems, and they didn't want to build the real-time sort of distributed infrastructure that powered everything. So this is where Firebase comes in. And what we ended up doing was we ended up separating the interface from the chat from the architecture. And we packaged that architecture and built a real-time database. And this is where things really started to take off. And so it's been, that was in about September 2011 that we really started working on that. And then it's been an incredible journey since then. We've really found that huge pain point that development was moving to just the client. When you're building a mobile application, working in two different languages between the client and the server is difficult. That mental context switch. Building an entire set of backend infrastructure, thinking about scaling it, and then delivering that data in real time was a really big technical challenge. And so we really hit on that large pain point. And having been through 3 companies prior, we really felt it. But we had also learned a lot of lessons. One of the lessons we had learned is it's great to be resilient, and it's great to really push through the hard times. But you should constantly be iterating and figuring out what the market wants and what your users want. So what we did when we were building Firebase was we designed the API and the interface. And we'd bring people in, we'd put them in front of a video camera, we'd give them the documentation, and we'd give them an hour, and we wouldn't even talk to them. We'd say, try and build this, and we'd give them a challenge. And we'd see where they banged their heads. And then we'd go and we'd review the videotape, we'd make a bunch of changes, and we'd do that again and again and again. And so by the time we actually launched it, we knew that it was going to be good, and we knew that it was going to be well received. And so then we could really focus on spreading the message far and wide. We could focus on building a community. And I can, in the Q&A session, I can talk a little bit more if any of you are building developer-facing products, kind of what that playbook looked like for us and how essential building that community was. Finding that initial group of people who really, really loved the product. So that was kind of how we got started with Firebase. But by the way, I've sort of spent a lot of the time on what happened pre-actually getting to Firebase. And for those of you who don't know, Firebase started off as a real-time database, as I sort of alluded to. So it let you build web and mobile applications without needing a backend, without needing to write any server code or run servers. So you just focus on building the user experience, building the tools that sit inside the browser or inside your mobile phone, and we take care of the rest. And we started with the database. We added user authentication. We added a hosting service. And then about 2 months ago at Google I/O, we've announced we're up to about 13 products and a couple more integrations. So we are sort of the complete package if you're building an application and you don't want to run your own servers or infrastructure. We provide you tools to help you not only build your application now, but also to grow your users and to earn money as well. So I've spent a lot of time on sort of the life pre-Firebase, but so the 5 years of building Firebase have probably been just as challenging, but they've been challenging coupled with the rewards of seeing the team grow and seeing the number of developers using Firebase grow. And it's really been a thrill. And I think one of the things that I've discovered that I cannot recommend enough is exercise. I developed a routine sort of early on in Firebase of going outside and running every single morning, doing like 15, 20 minutes of exercise. Fortunately, I live along the San Francisco Bay, so it's a beautiful view. So I hated running, and so I looked at the bay and the bridge, and that took my mind off of the thing I didn't like. But eventually, I learned to love it for the mental clarity it provides and the de-stressing it provides. So I cannot recommend that enough. So I can probably talk quite a bit about my time during Y Combinator, time at Firebase. I'll maybe touch a little bit on Google and how that whole process came around and what happened there. And then maybe we can go into the Q&A. So Google approached, we had a number of companies approach Firebase throughout its life. I think we had about 3 or 4 approaches before Google. One many times. So I think it was like five offers to acquire us. And you really know you're onto something when you start having those come in. And I strongly recommend not taking the first offer that comes along. Because if you're really onto something good, like there undoubtedly will be more. And just keep your head down and keep building. There are kind of three reasons to sell. One is if you're being offered sort of the offer that you're being given financially is capturing the value that you think you'll create later down the line. So if it's a really good offer. 2 is if you think there's sort of an imminent competitive threat. So if there's Google is coming into your space, or a competitor is about to launch something, or usually that won't kill you, but if it's drastic and you have good information, that's also potentially a reason to sell. The third reason to sell is the founders are tired. If the founders, if the captains of the ship aren't excited and jazzed on continuing the mission and continuing with the vision, then that might be a time to sell. So we had a number of companies approach us before, and we'd always said no. We thought hard about it, but said no because we knew we were onto something good because we'd had the previous experience to kind of benchmark against. And so we elected not to take any of those up on that offer. And so Google reached out, and their corp dev, it stands for corporate development team, reached out. And if you're unfamiliar, at large companies, the corporate development department is basically the M&A, mergers and acquisitions department. And so they'll go out and they'll either, on the behest of somebody on the business side, on the product side, will go out and approach a company, or they'll just go and explore various different spaces and talk to all of the companies in the space and say, hey, would you be interested in talking more? Generally, it's a huge waste of your time. It's best to just keep your head down and keep building your product. It might be worth having sort of an initial introductory call so that you can build the relationship, but generally not worth your time. So Google called, and I was actually fairly blunt on the phone. I was like, is this about acquiring us? And they kind of backpedaled a little bit and said, maybe that's a little bit too early to tell. And this was in about February of 2011. Oh, excuse me, February of 2014. And so we had that initial conversation. Things went dark for a few months. And then everything kind of came to a head over that summer. So we went out. We had a massive product launch in May of that year. And at that time, we had a lot of investors reached out to us about doing a Series B. And we had a lot of, all of the sort of the previous mergers and acquisitions folks reached out to us again. And so we sort of ran a process where we went through, let's have the acquisition conversations and let's have the Series B conversations and see how things sort of stack up against each other. And never intended to actually sell the company, and intended to sort of use the mergers and acquisitions conversations to get a better offer for our Series B. It turns out a couple of things happened. One is that the offer was quite good. And then two is we negotiated with Google and really sort of like had a fantastic alternative, which was to continue building the company, but laid it all out and said, we want to keep the brand. We've built an immense amount of love in the developer community. We really have a focus on making developers happy and providing great support and like all of the tooling around building your product. And like, there's such a theme in the technology industry around when a company gets acquired, it'll go away, or the bigger company will ruin the product, and probably statistically that's actually true, and I didn't want that to happen. I was like, had a lot of passion for what we built, and the environment we built both internally and externally, and so negotiated all of these terms with Google, and said like, this cannot happen, and so we had all that in place, and so ultimately it made sense to join Google. And so we've been there for about 18 months now, and it's gone really well. So they're investing a huge amount of resources into Firebase, and we're sort of connecting with Google Analytics. The next version of Google Analytics is called Firebase Analytics. It's baked right into Firebase. Connecting with their ads products, connecting with all of their Google Cloud, which is the Amazon Web Services competitor that Google has. And sort of by all accounts, it's been one of the more successful acquisitions, and I'd really love to see it grow. It'll never have the brand recognition of YouTube or Android, because it's not a consumer product. But in the developer space, among developers, I want Firebase to be one of the tools that every developer knows and loves. and hopefully powers every single application. So that's kind of my story. To recap, keep going. It's really painful. Be resilient. Get exercise. Get alignment with your co-founders. Build a strong foundation of trust. Be optimistic. There are some don'ts. Don't go against human nature. That's bad. Find the market. Find product market fit. Some other miscellaneous things. Always have a plan. Like, it's useless being resourceful and being resilient, like, if you don't know where you're going. Like, have a North Star. Like, it's really good to go through quarterly planning exercises. At large companies, you'll have strategy meetings, and like, I strongly encourage you to do the exact same in your startup. It'll do wonders for you. And then you can sort of benchmark against where you thought you'd be and where you are. And it'll help you make those decisions around where to course correct. With my initial 2 companies, we switched because it just got so painful and blindingly obvious. We probably could have switched earlier if we'd actually been like saying, this is where we want to get to. It also helps you build accountability with your co-founder. If you say, you do this and I'll do that, or co-founders or early employees, and you know if someone's not pulling your weight, like, you really need everyone to be committed. And then don't impolitely harass people. Like, there's a difference between being like hard charging and resourceful and going out there and getting it. But don't piss people off. If they say no, like, harass them until they say no. But if they actually say no, then like, leave them alone. Your reputation is sort of everything in this ecosystem.
What is the next step for Firebase?
Do you want a general answer? Do you have specific questions? So as you saw, if anyone missed it, at Google I/O, I guess about a month and a half ago now, on stage alongside Android Instant Apps and Google Home and all of the machine learning stuff, we announced a huge upgrade to Firebase, huge expansion. And so we're going to continue to refine and iterate on those products. Integration is going to be a huge theme. So we really want to connect. Basically, Firebase is going to be is the on-ramp to Google. So we want you to get started with Firebase, and as you scale, you go to Google Cloud. We want you to onboard with Firebase, and then you deploy to Google Play, and we give you all these amazing tools to build your Android application. Obviously, it's Android, iOS, and web, but since it's Google, we have that direct line. And then the ads, AdWords, AdMob, we want to directly integrate there to help you earn more money. We have some fantastic products in the pipeline that I can't talk about. But you should stay tuned because they're going to be amazing. We actually mentioned one at Google I/O. So there's something called Google Cloud Functions, which is similar to Amazon's Lambda. What it is when you're building a Firebase app right now, we provide you data storage. We provide you authentication. We provide you file storage, a whole bunch of things. But in order to do compute, in order to do computation, you still need to run your own. If you want to like do data-intensive stuff or battery-intensive stuff that you don't want to do on the device, or you want to run trusted code that you don't want to send down to the client, you need to spin up your own instance. And so we have this lightweight function. Basically, you store a function with us, and when something changes in the database, it'll execute that code. So you can put a filter on an image, or kick off an SMS through Twilio, or process a payment. So that integration is coming. But yeah, Google's taking this very seriously, and I'm really excited for the future.
And will the web will catch up? It's late.
Yes. So we prioritized native mobile for a lot of our offerings, and yeah, web parity is a huge goal. So you'll see a lot of that coming soon.
Hi. Thank you for the story, and thank you for Firebase. It's an amazing solution. Just a question. At the early beginning, what were your best channel to target developers and developer communities?
So the question is, what is the best channel to target developers? So developers are a very unique audience. There's traditionally, when you're talking about marketing and products, there's sort of B2C or business to consumer and B2B or business to business or enterprise. And there's sort of in the last 5-ish years become this B2D because developers sit both, they are individuals and, startup employees, and they also sit inside large organizations. And they're very savvy. They sit at a computer all day looking for like missing semicolons and typing syntax and typing errors. And so like they will really pass through all of your marketing. And if you use fluff, or if you say something is amazing without saying why, or unsubstantiated claims, they'll say this is BS, like prove it. So I think the first thing is wherever you're targeting them, you need to speak in a very open, transparent, honest, like data-driven, like providing them value for like very short, terse, like valuable communication. Nothing like, this is amazing, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Like that doesn't resonate with developers. So in terms of, and then the second thing to that end is developers have like much more so, word of mouth is known because it's a credible source telling you like, hey, go check this out. Developers, it's even more so. They trust their peers. So building buzz and building a community, building an ecosystem is extremely important. So what you want to do is you want to make a very small group of them love you, like a lot. And so what you do is you pay attention to a very small number. Like what we did starting Firebase is we had a Google group, like a mailing list, and we put like 12 people on there. And we sent them like very specific questions like, hey, our API could do this or this. Like, what should it do? What do you think? Or we'd send them surveys. We'd ask their opinions. And they felt like they were building the product with us. They got emotionally engaged. They felt ownership, like they owned a part of Firebase. And so when we came time, and we grew that to probably about 40 people, and you add people slowly. And so when we came to launch Firebase, we had this group of people who would like go on Hacker News and go on Twitter and go on Product Hunt, and they'd be like, this thing is amazing. You should use this. It's fantastic. Like the team is really responsive. So you really want to build that kernel of a group. And then you sort of start the ball rolling from there. And so you sort of pair that with, you use that kernel of people, that group of people, to really broadcast your message. So you invite people with like 10, 20, 30, 40,000 Twitter followers into that group. And then they start broadcasting your message. And there are these sort of influencers who, like Brendan Eich, the guy who invented JavaScript. Like, we conversed with him, and he was responsible for like tweeting quite a bit about Firebase and really building that awareness. So sort of step one is to build the awareness, and you go on there's a whole thing. Hack and Use is fantastic. Like TechCrunch, when we launched, I think TechCrunch drove us like 2,000 or 3,000 uniques. Hack and Use drove us 30,000. It's like 10x as effective. Product Hunt has come into its own lately. Highly recommend Product Hunt. So the next thing, once you've sort of built, and developers, they pick up, this is a really long answer, sorry. developers pick up tools to solve their problems when they have a problem. They don't hear about Firebase and then they're like, oh, let me go use it on this problem. They'll like hear about Firebase and like maybe they'll go and play around with it on a weekend or a personal project. But once it comes to like build their next startup or fix their next problem at work, they already need to have experience with Firebase. So that awareness is critical. So once you build awareness, you need to build credibility. And you've kind of done that a little bit with having people like Brendan Eich or whoever else tweeting about you. But the way you build credibility is you have showcase customers. So you have like, hey, these people being successful with my tool, you can too. And you start building case studies, and the bigger the name, the better. And so what you have a case studies page, and you just constantly like swap them out, the better the case study. So that's my like short answer on, and like developer support, have a great mailing list, be responsive on Twitter and other channels. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but like once the ball gets rolling, it's good.
The question is, as Firebase develops and as you have this Google backing and ideas, what's it going to do to the developer community? Will non-developers be able to start developing products and apps at the same level as developers today?
Ultimately, like an application or any piece of software is just a series of choices. And programming languages have gotten like, they've sort of iteratively gotten better at being very expressive about how you express those choices. And like assembly was terrible. Well, it was good at some things, but like if you wanted to quickly express a whole bunch of concepts, it was fairly verbose and tedious. I think there's always going to be a line between like speed and customization, and so I think there will always be a place where you need to be a programmer to really implement custom logic. There's sort of then like you had Parse and Firebase, and there was about 40 of the backend as a service companies like 3 years ago. And over sort of the past 2 years, there's been this next generation that's come along. So I think, what are some of the ones out there? There's Stack Hut was one of them. There's, I forget the names of them, but there's like 3 or 4 of them out there that actually let you drag and drop. When you're building an application, they let you like drag and drop and put together the blocks. And I think that'll take care of a large majority of the market. But as an entrepreneur, like when I think about how do I monetize, with developer tools, you never make money off of like the 95% of your users. You only make money off of the 5%, the whales, the big companies. Like Twitch TV is our biggest customer. They have like, no, I can't say that number out loud, but they have a lot of people connected to Firebase at any given time. And they pay us a lot of money. But those applications where I'm just like Twitch TV isn't going to like use one of these like drag and drop editors. They'll want the full power. So I'm not sure if I could build like a hugely viable business out of one of those like drag and drop tools. I think it'll happen. I think it'll be there if you want to build an application. I think it'll be limited in functionality. It'll sort of be like Wix or Weebly or one of these website builders, right? Like if you just want it for your shop or your store or your one-person business, like fantastic. If you want it to build something serious, you're going to do it by hand.
When did you start selling your product, Firebase?
So we started building Firebase in September 2011. We launched it we told the world about it into beta in April of 2012, so about 8 months. And then we waited about another year. So it was about 2 years that we'd been building it and 1 year in beta before we started charging for it. And I can give you more. So again, developer tools, like you need people to use it to tell you what's wrong with it. So we wanted as many people using it as we could, and so we made it free. We wanted feedback on the pricing. So when we went into beta, we put up a pricing page and we said, this is what the pricing will be. We had a big feedback thing at the bottom, and we constantly iterated on that. And we had Google Analytics set up, and how much time did people spend on the page? What feedback did they give us? How did people react to different pricing? And so by the time we launched, we had a pretty good idea. And we actually had a few people. We were charging a few of our larger customers. I think Twitch TV was our first paying customer. And that really helped get because we raised our Series A like a month before we started charging.
How do you manage to continue developing the product and getting so much feedback and being very open and having your first consumer that pays you to have a product that works?
Good question. So we had been developing the product for a long time. It had been like a year and 9 months in development. And so it was the mold was forming. It was kind of solidifying. And so I think it was a natural progression. Like Twitch had been using us as a free product for a while, and we said, okay, it's time to pay now, as sort of a test, because we were going to make everyone pay very shortly, but we wanted a few people. We'd gotten people to tell us what they thought of the pricing, but we'd actually never said, okay, give us your credit card, and we wanted to do that before we made everyone do it. So I think it was kind of a natural progression. We didn't really have to balance the two. It was more of this is a logical next step.
Did you have the market or your investors or anything else trying to push you into changing your offer or product for instance, enterprise, on-premise, anything like that?
So our investors were fantastic. They both invested in MongoDB. So we had Union Square Ventures and then Flybridge. And so Union Square did the Series A for Mongo, and then Flybridge did the B. Union Square also did Twilio, and they were in Stack Exchange, which makes Stack Overflow. So they're both very familiar with developer tools, and they understand that you build something and then see where it goes. We have had customers putting a lot of pressure on what Firebase should be. And I think that's fantastic. You want that. You want people who give a shit, who really care about your product, to give you this feedback, because it means that they care about it. And so we sort of aggregated all of that and then used it to determine our direction. But yeah, our investors were fantastic.
Are you coding on the product?
Oh, am I coding?
Yeah.
No, so I'm the lead product manager, or one of the lead product managers. So I spend my day in meetings determining what features we're building and hiring, and so it's not so different from when I was actually the CEO. I write sample applications, and I test out the new features as if I were a user, but no, I don't build the core product.
What is it coded in? What is the basis of Firebase?
So the Involve, the chat system, was in Java, and then because of the concurrency challenges, we were either going to choose Scala or Erlang, and we went with Scala, and we use Akka on top of that, and then Netty handles all of our networking layer, and then it's obviously Objective-C, Java, JavaScript for the clients. The hosting product is all Node. The authentication system is Node as well, though we're playing around with Go now. And then all of the new stuff is in Java, because Google. And yeah, thank you for having me. It's really cool to see what is going on here in Paris, and I hope you guys continue to grow and build. Thank you.
Que la famille.